Hey folks, this is Dan Shirley from War Weasel Racing. I had received a question about stuff to keep in a first aid kit. So I take this really seriously. I've been a firefighter for 20 years. I also have my EMR certification in Pennsylvania, so emergency medical responder. So basically the step between first aid and EMT. So I actually carry quite a bit of first aid equipment with me in my rally car when I go racing. Most of this is well beyond what you'd basically expect from a first aid person. But I wanted to show you some of the cool stuff that I do keep and would potentially recommend for people to consider for their own kits. For starters, a big thing that I would say is absolutely make sure that your stuff is in date. A lot of times what you'll have in your kits that you probably have purchased years ago is things like these alcohol pads long since expired. They're not going to do you any good. You should go through your kits at a minimum just to make sure that your things are still in date. Band-aids, adhesives, anything like that's going to go bad after some period of time. So I'm just going to start kind of at one end of the table. I'll first describe my bag just so it makes a little bit of sense as I go through the sections. I have my bag labeled in 3 different main compartments. So one is my tourniquet section. So this is absolute emergency, the first pouch in here. The second one I have labeled as blood, and then the last one is trauma. So I know if I need to have somebody open my bag for me to grab something, I'll tell them the specific compartment they're going into. I've basically emptied most of everything out of here right now and put it out on the table. I also have some tape on the side compartment just because that needs pretty common to need to get to that. I don't want to have to dig through the compartments for it. And then I have some other oddball things. Flashlight, pens, markers. This is really important for me if I need to write something down. Other kind of oddball things, I have just random piece of webbing. God only knows what I might need to use this for, but I have this in here. I think this is about 10 feet. And then I have this big tool here. This is actually a firefighting rescue tool. The loops on this thing is rated for a tremendous amount of weight. The main thought that I have for keeping this in my bag is if I have a car overturned on a roof and we can't quite get somebody out easily, I can drop this into the car, hold on to the one end, and they can basically just walk up this like a ladder. I can also use it to secure a car if we're worried about it rolling down a hill or something. And then last but not least, pocket knife. Again, something that you'd never know what you might need this for. So could be for cutting seatbelts. It's just in the bag if I need it. Of course, I have the seatbelt cutter, and they should also have one in their car. But we don't know. Maybe we can't get to it for some reason. So the compartments, as I described, I don't necessarily think that everyone needs to carry this stuff. Again, this is just kind of things that I have, and I'll give you a little bit of an explanation of why I have it. For starters, I have multiple tourniquets. These are combat tourniquets. These are fantastic. I have multiple because if you do need to use one, we almost always will use 2 automatically. If we had a severe injury like potentially loss of limb or a severe fracture. Another thing that I have, this typically is called an Israeli bandage. Kind of works like a tourniquet. This is a little bit more for like a larger open wound, and you can really torque this thing down again for compression on a wound. Tourniquets, to be honest with you, if there was ever a moment where you need one, you do not have a chance to think about this. These things, I think they were like $20 a piece. It does cost something, but to be honest, having this like in your own vehicle just for whatever situation comes up, you can Google how to use it. These things are tremendously important and saved God only knows how many lives throughout the years in military applications and also general paramedic fire service as well. Really useful tools to have. Again, not necessarily important for a rally car, but probably the most important. That's why it has its own pocket. So general stuff for a first aid kit that you should have. My kit, tons and tons of little gauze rolls, various sizes. I have some longer ones. I have traditional gauze with the little metal clips on it and things. I also have multiple triangular bandages, so this is for like if I need to tie somebody's arm up if they have an injury to their arm. You can use them for all sorts of different things, and just kind of using it as an example. Tons and tons of these guys. I really recommend this. Especially for rally in particular. I think a lot of times what we're going to see is wounds from glass, like cuts to the arm, pretty big ones that I've seen in rallycross and things over the years. These guys are great. This is the type of situation where you put one on. If the blood soaks through, you just keep adding more to it. You can get a million of these things. They cost hardly anything at Walmart. But this is really great. And if you get it pretty secure, you can put this on and then wrap it with a gauze, secure it, and away you go. I have another Israeli bandage in that compartment as well, just in case I'm in there, because again, this is my blood compartment. Other odds and ends, I should have mentioned this one right off the bat. PPE, I have glasses and multiple sets of gloves in here. We describe it this way, it's a little bit gross, but if somebody's squirting blood, I don't want it in my eyes, so glasses. Hand warmers, just in case, again, I don't know what the situation is, those can be useful, and they're also really cheap. Bunch of little alcohol wipes, again, really, really cheap, no-brainer to keep in your stuff. This one, definitely not necessarily something that other people would need, but especially for cutting race suits, surgical scissors. Really, really effective at cutting fabrics and things, so this is kind of a must-have for me. Tweezers. I also have, again, some more absorbent pads. I also have a giant trauma dressing, so this thing, just to give you a sense of how big that is, similar to the pads, works kind of the same way. And then kind of another oddball piece that people don't really think of until it's time, but if I don't know you, I don't want to make out with you, I have my CPR mask, right? So, again, maybe you don't necessarily need it, but if I was in a situation where I needed to use one, I sure as hell want to have it with me. So, last compartment, my trauma. This is probably not applicable to most people. The only thing I'd say that would be important is just in this compartment because I need more room. I have a wound wash, especially out in the middle of the woods, and especially because there's gravel everywhere. Getting the stuff out of the wound before you package it up is really important. Otherwise, you're going to get nasty infections later on. Might not be my problem, but it will be yours. And here's another one that's kind of a no-brainer, especially with glass and dust and everything else that's out there. Eye wash would be a really good idea too. I do have a C-collar in my bag. I also have some just emergency blankets. I have a really big one, cheap one from Walmart, and then this guy, one of the tiny little lightweight ones. Again, if we're sitting out somewhere for a long time, and I'm hoping that we aren't, I can still get somebody kind of covered up if that's the situation. Similar. Cold packs, again, if I have somebody that's overheating, I've seen this before out at STPR before where somebody's overheating, can break these open, stick this in somebody's armpits or in their crotch or something to cool them down really quickly. Another random triangle bandage that's hiding over here. And then something that people most certainly shouldn't need, and you should not be using this unless you know what it is, a chest seal. This is really for like gunshot wounds and things, or potentially if we had a puncture from a tree branch or something. This is a special gasket that we can use to seal a wound shut if it's actually gone into the same cavity as your lungs. So weird thing. Again, you definitely don't need that one. These splints, I believe they're called SAM splints. This thing is basically a metal wrapped in foam. This can be shaped into whatever you need. This would be great for arms. Don't really think most people need this, but again, I can secure somebody with these types of things and then hopefully ask the ambulance that shows up after me to kind of give me another one if they have it. And then the really odd piece that I don't expect anybody to have, I'm sorry, Bobby, I forgot the name of it, but your oral airway. So if I need to keep somebody's mouth and their tongue out of the way, I can do this. This is really, really bad situation if I'm doing that, though. So definitely don't try to buy yourself an oral airway. And then a last kind of dumb no-brainer. Probably get new ones for this year so that somebody isn't drinking really gross water. But who the hell knows what we have going on. Plenty of people have heat stress. I have some bottles of water with me in my bag so I can throw them to somebody if that's the situation. I can also use that to wet something if somebody's really overheating. Yes, I have my ice packs, but I can also wet some gauze pads and put that on their forehead to just help cool them down. So, yeah, again, I don't really need anybody telling me that this is overkill. I understand that, but again, I'm more qualified than most people for first aid, so I have a lot of stuff with me just in case the worst were to happen at a rally. And hopefully, you kind of get a sense of what's out there, and based on what your level of comfort is, these are some of the things that I could recommend you carry in your own medical kits, because who knows, you might be helping me too. So, again, thanks, Dan Shirley from War Weasel Racing, and yeah, have a good night.